The importance of a star is so relevant. It's not a term that we can just throw out. And it's very tough when you're in a position, and perhaps I am looking at what Jon Jones is going through with 205 pounds right now, where he's trying to stand out. And he possibly is making an argument of, hey, look, Masvidal was just in the same spot. Masvidal came back. Look at how great Masvidal did. Don't you see the point of working with me? Now, I don't know that that's where he would be, but I would think if I was in Jon's spot, that might be something I would want to point to. Point to somebody else doing the same thing that I'm doing and say, hey, you should get the same result. You have one significant difference, though, which is what is a star versus what is a big fight, and which one would you rather have? And ultimately, that's the big question. For example, the three biggest stars, Conor McGregor, and we'll just look at his very last fight. Conor did more than 1 million buys, okay? George Masvidal, in his very last fight, did more than 1.3 million buys. Nate Diaz, in his last fight, did more than 1 million pay-per-view buys. Now, you do have to understand that because these are stars, and the difference is you could put them with anybody that you want, any way that you want to do it. Conor's last fight was against Cowboy. That's what Conor did. Masvidal's last fight was against Usman. That's what Masvidal did, 1.3. Nate Diaz's last fight was against Masvidal, but don't forget, that wasn't Masvidal who was Masvidal. That was a different Masvidal. Nate was the A side that night. He did 1 million. All stars. So now if you were to look about that and go, wait a minute, what about a great fight? And that would be the card that, say, Jones is trying to play. Jones, who is not a star. And he's not a star very unfairly, in fairness. Jon has done everything right in terms of going out there being a very rare, a very dynamic, a very entertaining talent. He's done it so well, he's plagued with a little bit of what Roy Jones Jr. was plagued with, where people are just not going to read a book if they know how the story ends. And people in their wildest dreams just are not imagined to close their eyes and picture Jon Jones losing. We're aware that that day will come, but there isn't something captivating about it. Let me give you an example. Jon Jones versus Gustafsson Part 1 was around 240,000 buys. I remember where I was and there was no excitement for it. Now, Gus came out and shocked us all, almost left with the title, and we couldn't wait for that rematch because now we don't know how the story ends. I would argue for you that Jon could be in a similar situation now with Reyes. Their first fight was not a sought-after fight. That did not do great numbers, and that wasn't something that people were clamoring to see. I would speculate that their second fight is. But that is the one and only card that Jon has to throw across the table. He does not have, I've got Reyes, and if I lose, I go over here, and this is going to be a mega fight, and here's why, and should I win, I go over here, and that's going to be a mega fight, and here's why. He doesn't have any of those steps lined up. It's why his argument stinks. It's why that he's sitting out. Masvidal, by example, who did get what he wanted, did everything wrong but got what he wanted. A little of it was the timing. He very much had timing on his side. And when I say a little, a lot of it was the timing. But Masvidal also had a totally different approach. Masvidal's approach was never, here's how good I am, here's what I've won, and here's what my record is. That is a sucker's move that a sucker makes at the other side of the table, hears 5 times a day, every day, and is more than ready to swat away. Masvidal's approach was to tell the truth, and the truth will set you free, and the truth was, I bring you money, and I want some of it. That's a different argument. It's the correct argument. It's right, but it's also different. It just is. And it's not one that very many people can make because it wouldn't be true for very many people. You will have people with immense amounts of skill. Those are left and right. Those are anybody that you've ever seen on TV within this sport. That isn't enough to draw any level of distinction. It never has been. It's very tough. And when I do look at Jon, I do think it's a little bit unfair. And it's a very tough recipe to start to solve. Now, Jon is very well paid and very well taken care of. What I'm saying is there does appear to be a ceiling on Jon, but that's just a reality. There's just not a lot that you can do. And Jon isn't an overly interesting guy that's out there getting anything going with anybody, right? If he had the sense that God gave geese or paid attention to his own sport, he'd be out building 3 big fights right now before he sat down at the table to start negotiating. Right now, he has one fight that people are interested in, and it's only to see him lose. Good enough. Doesn't matter what the reason is at all. Good enough. But it would make you very curious, how long is Dominic Reyes going to wait? And as soon as Dominic Reyes find somebody to fill that dance slot, how quickly is Jon going to come back to the table? Or is he willing to make it crystal clear to the world, the only thing I don't want to do is fight Reyes. I'll do anything else. Is he willing to make that clear? I don't have the answer. We'll just have to wait and see. Khabib Nurmagomedov would be an antithesis to the premise that I just laid out for you. Completely undefeated, 29-0, only lost one round. Most dominant fighter in the history of the sport, relevant to the fact that he has more 10-8 rounds than any combat athlete to ever live. That's a stat that nobody ever gives him. You're getting that right here from me. But Khabib Nurmagomedov has more 10-8 rounds of professional combat than any athlete to have ever done it, which shows his dominance. Why is he so interesting? If a guy's never been beaten and he's only lost one round and he's also winning these 10-8 where the score is so lopsided, you have to get a calculator out to figure out just how much did he win by. Why is he so damn interesting? And that's pretty easy. He's done a good job of letting everybody in on his story. He never worked a gimmick or a character. All right, when you have Jon that had worked a gimmick and a character for a meaningful period of time, he also picked the most boring character that I possibly could. Oh, peace be with you, right? It was disgusting. It was nauseating. In addition to it not even being true, it was just one of these weird things. Khabib lets you in, got a great relationship with his father. He believes what he believes. He lives by his own code. He stays amongst his village within his people, no matter how much money or fame he had garnered. Turns out when he was 5 years old, he used to wrestle bears. He eats on these days. He fasts on this days. He lets you in it. He's got this broken English gimmick where I can't figure out if Khabib is secretly really, really funny or if he's just saying things because of his lack of handling of the language so it comes out funny. I don't know. But every time he says, the guy's great. Shows up to a press conference for Conor McGregor, shows up on time and says, I'm leaving when my schedule says to leave. Conor wasn't there, so I'll leave without Conor. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I don't wait for this guy. I just thought that was interesting. He jumps the cage, gets into a melee with Dylan Dennis so bad the security had to remove the sitting governor of the state of Nevada and usher him out a back door. Khabib shows up to a press conference 8 minutes after this was done and says, I don't know why you guys still speak about this. It was 8 minutes after the biggest melee in the history of the sport. Khabib said, I don't know why you still speak about this. There's no way to say Khabib's just not interesting, period. Then when you're at 155 pounds where it's iron on top of iron and there's very meaningful opponents that have their own stories they're bringing in with their own conflicting styles, for some reason it seems to work with Khabib. Dominant fighter, named Khabib, is one of the biggest stars in the whole industry. Which is counterintuitive to what I just laid out, why other people with wild levels of success can't get over. But if Khabib was to go to the table right now and make some kind of an argument, it would be very hard to tell him no. Not because he's good or because what he has next or what could be, because he comes in with a whole bunch of matches. I got Tony waiting in the wings somewhere. I got Gaethje lined up, and we're talking about this Conor business that you like. I got 3 huge matches that have all moved. It was supposed to be Tony. That was going to be blockbuster business. We even had an arena, and it was completely sold out till that went away. It's now moved to Gaethje, which people are looking down the days. Can't wait until we get here. Totally different opponent. Never even got through this one. Moved right through this one. Oh, and by the way, everybody's telling me they want me to rematch Conor, which is the biggest fight in the history of the sport. You've really got something to bring to the table. If you're sitting in Jon's spot, what are you going to say? You want me to fight this guy who many people think beat me, didn't do terribly good business the first time. We will guess it'll do better business the second time because the sequel is often better than the first. Oh, by the way, when I'm done with that, I don't have any ideas for you. Should I lose that? I've got no plan. Should I win that? I've got absolutely no plan. Pin me, pay me. Versus Masvidal, who never brought up records, never brought up skills, never brought up belts, never brought up medals, never brought up a damn thing. Simply said, I bring in attention and I want attended to for that. Do you see the difference in the argument?